They called her the Queen of Pop, the woman who had everything. But few people know what she quietly gave away. Millions of dollars gone, without a single headline. Why? Nobody knew. In a small African village, children still whisper her name. In hospitals she never visited. Her donations saved lives she never met. Yet Madonna never spoke about it. Not once. Some say it was guilt. Others say it was gratitude for a childhood filled with pain, loss, and silence. But the truth is far deeper, because the real reason she gave away everything started with one promise she made as a little girl, standing alone at her mother's grave. Stay with me till the end. When you hear why she kept that promise, you'll never see Madonna the same way again. The lights, the cameras, the endless applause. None of it existed yet. Before the fame, before the glamour, there was only a little girl named Madonna Louise Ciccone, growing up in the quiet suburbs of Michigan, and the silence that followed her everywhere. She was 5 when her world shattered. Her mother, her safe place, her only warmth, was taken by cancer. No words could explain that kind of emptiness. Madonna remembered the hospital smell, the stillness in the room, and her father's eyes. Cold not because he didn't love her, but because he didn't know how to hold so much pain at once. That day the world lost a woman, and a little girl lost her home. After that, the house never felt alive again. The laughter disappeared from the walls, replaced by chores, responsibilities, and a quiet grief no one spoke about. Madonna became the little mother, cooking, cleaning, helping raise her younger siblings, while her father remarried just to hold the family together. But love didn't come back with that marriage. At school, she stood out. Too different, too wild for a small Catholic town. She questioned everything. Why did God take her mother? Why did the world feel so unfair to girls who dreamed bigger than their surroundings? She started dancing, not to be seen but to escape. Every movement was a conversation with her mother's memory. When she danced, the sadness became energy. The tears turned into rhythm. And though people laughed at her boldness, she didn't care. She said once in an interview, "I wanted to be somebody. I wanted to make my mother proud, wherever she was." At 16, she packed a small suitcase, kissed her father goodbye, and boarded a bus to New York City. She had only $35 in her pocket, but in her eyes, there was fire. That kind of fearless energy that only comes from someone who's already survived heartbreak. New York in the late 1970s wasn't the dream people imagine. It was dirty, dangerous, and unforgiving. She slept in tiny apartments, sometimes with no heat, sometimes on friends' couches. She took random jobs, waitressing, modeling, even dancing in nightclubs, just to afford food. There were nights when she didn't eat at all. But she refused to go back home. She told herself, if I leave, the world wins, and I didn't come this far to lose. Rejection became her daily language. Every audition, every label, every stage door. No, not you. Too short, too loud, too different. But something about her never gave up. Every no made her sharper. Every failure made her fearless. And soon, the same city that once ignored her began to whisper her name. She started performing in underground clubs, places filled with dreamers and misfits. She sang, she danced, she screamed her truth into the microphone. And for the first time, people didn't just hear her. They felt her. Her energy was raw, rebellious, magnetic. It wasn't about fame. It was about freedom. But even as success began to flicker on the horizon, she carried something heavier than ambition. The memory of a mother she couldn't save, and a childhood that taught her pain before peace. That pain became her greatest weapon. Because deep down, Madonna believed one thing. If life could take everything from me that young, maybe one day I could give something back. And that thought, that small spark of purpose, would one day turn into something unimaginable. Millions of dollars in secret donations, schools built in her mother's name, lives changed by a woman the world thought only lived for fame. But in the beginning, there was only a little girl, standing in the dark, learning how to dance with her pain. New York had seen many dreamers. Most came, shined for a while, and vanished under the weight of rejection, but not Madonna. She had learned how to fight long before she ever learned how to sing. By 1982, she was living in a tiny apartment infested with cockroaches, with one broken mirror and a cheap cassette recorder. But that's where she wrote her first hit, Everybody. The song wasn't just music. It was a cry from a girl who refused to be invisible anymore. When the song hit the clubs, people felt something electric. something rebellious and alive. Soon came Like a Virgin, Material Girl, and a decade that would never forget her name. She broke every rule, every stereotype. She wasn't just singing. She was challenging an entire world that told women to stay quiet, to stay small, to stay grateful for less. Madonna became a storm, but storms, even beautiful ones, come from deep silence. Behind every flashing camera, she still carried that memory. Her mother's empty chair, the feeling of being unseen. And when she looked out into crowds of thousands, part of her wondered, does any of this really fill the hole I've been running from? Fame was loud, but her heart was still whispering. She saw the world now, the suffering, the injustice, the same kind of helplessness she once felt as a child. And that's when her life took a turn no one saw coming. The birth of purpose, it began quietly, with a single visit to Malawi, one of the poorest nations in Africa. She wasn't there for publicity. No photographers, no interviews. She went because she had heard about thousands of children who had lost their parents to disease and poverty. When she arrived, the world of fame disappeared. No lights, no red carpets, just dust, sunlight, and hundreds of tiny faces. Children who smiled despite having nothing. One little girl, maybe 5 years old, held Madonna's hand and said in a small voice, "Are you going to take me home?" That sentence broke something inside her. It wasn't just pity, it was recognition. That child's longing was the same emptiness Madonna had carried all her life. When she returned to America, she couldn't sleep. The stage lights felt colder now, the applause emptier. She realized she didn't just want to be famous, she wanted to be useful, and that's when she began donating. Quietly, secretly, without headlines. The secret gifts, at first, she gave small amounts, funding schools, medical supplies, and food programs through local charities. But then she decided to build something lasting, something that would outlive her fame. In 2006, she launched Raising Malawi, a foundation dedicated to helping orphans, building schools and providing medical care. Her first project was an orphanage and later a full hospital wing, the Mercy James Pediatric Surgery Center, named after her adopted daughter. Most people only saw the surface. Madonna adopts a child. What they didn't see were the hundreds of children whose surgeries she quietly paid for, the communities she rebuilt, or the teachers she employed. Her accountants tried to talk her out of giving so much. Her managers warned, "It's not good PR to donate in silence. People need to see you helping." But Madonna refused. She said softly, "If they need to see it to believe it, then they don't believe in the first place." Giving through the pain during this time, she also faced criticism. The tabloids attacked her, questioned her motives, mocked her personal life. But she didn't respond. She had learned that real giving doesn't need defending. While others fought over fame, she was visiting hospitals in Malawi, holding sick children, singing softly to babies too weak to open their eyes. Doctors later said she personally funded treatments for hundreds of patients and stayed hours with families no one else had time for. She didn't care about cameras anymore. The girl who once wanted the world to see her now only wanted the world to heal. There's one story few people know. One night, while visiting a school her foundation helped build, Madonna met a teacher named Grace, a woman who had lost her entire family in a flood. Grace said, "You've given us a school, but what I needed was hope, and somehow you brought that too." Madonna hugged her and whispered, "Hope is all I had left once. I just learned how to share it." The woman. Behind the fame, by the late 2000s, Madonna was one of the most successful artists in history. Over 300 million records sold, countless awards, billions in revenue. Yet she never stopped her humanitarian work. She adopted 4 children from Malawi, all of whom she raised with love and humility, never allowing them to forget their roots. Her donations exceeded $100 million across multiple causes: children's health, education, women's rights, and disaster relief. But she never bragged about it. And still, the media preferred gossip over goodness. They talked about her costumes, her age, her relationships, never about the hospitals she funded or the lives she changed. But maybe that was exactly how she wanted it, because the real Madonna wasn't the woman on the magazine covers. She was the one walking through the dust of a distant village, holding a child's hand, smiling quietly as if she had finally found peace. She once told a close friend, "I spent half my life wanting the world to see me. Now I just want to see the world and heal what I can before I go." Her fame gave her wealth. Her pain gave her purpose. And together, they turned her into something rare. A celebrity who didn't just donate money, but herself. Her time, her energy, her heart, poured into children she'd never meet again. Communities that would never know her personally, but would feel her kindness for generations. Every act of giving was her way of rewriting her own childhood. A message to that little girl who lost her mother too soon. You couldn't save her, but you can save others. And that's exactly what she did. From empty stages to orphanage courtyards, from luxury hotels to dusty village roads, Madonna walked through both worlds, carrying the same unshakable truth. Fame fades, money fades, but love, when given freely, lasts forever. The sun was setting over Malawi. A golden light spilled over the fields, touching the faces of children running barefoot through the dust. Their laughter echoed through the village, free, wild, unbroken, and in the middle of it all stood Madonna, quietly watching. Her hair tied back, her clothes simple, a notebook in her hand. No stage, no cameras, just her, surrounded by the life she had helped rebuild. For a moment, she wasn't the queen of pop. She wasn't the icon, the legend, or the headline. She was simply a woman keeping a promise she had made decades ago, a promise whispered at her mother's grave. "If I ever find the light again, I'll share it." Lives touched by a hidden hand at. The New Mercy James Pediatric Hospital, a young boy named Isaac was recovering from heart surgery. He was 8 years old, born with a defect that could have taken his life. His mother sat by his bed, whispering prayers of gratitude, because her son had been saved by a woman she had never met. When she learned who funded the hospital, she cried. "Madonna," she said softly. "The singer? I didn't know angels could dance." In another village, a young girl named Thandi was reading under a mango tree, the first girl in her family to ever go to school. Her education, her books, her future, all paid for by the same foundation. When asked what she wanted to become, she smiled shyly and said, "A teacher, so I can help other girls, just like she helped me." These weren't just donations. They were ripples, invisible hands reaching through generations. Every life touched, every child saved, every dream restored, all born from the pain of one woman who refused to let grief end her story. The world takes notice in 2017. The hospital was completed, 50 beds, 3 operating rooms, and the capacity to perform over 500 surgeries a year. It wasn't just a building, it was a message. Madonna stood there on opening day, surrounded by doctors, children, and her daughter Mercy, whose name now graced the hospital walls. When she spoke, her voice trembled with sincerity. "I was given a lot in life: fame, fortune, opportunity. But the only thing that ever truly mattered was learning how to give it back." The crowd applauded, but for Madonna, it wasn't applause that mattered anymore. It was the heartbeat of every child behind those hospital walls, the turning point. The more she gave, the quieter she became. She stopped talking about her donations, stopped inviting cameras. When reporters asked her why she didn't publicize her charity work, she smiled and said, "Because kindness doesn't need witnesses." But her actions spoke louder than any interview. In secret, she funded women's shelters across the US and supported education programs for girls in Afghanistan and Kenya. When natural disasters struck, from Haiti to Indonesia, her money reached quietly before the media did. Even some of her own team members didn't know where all the funds were going. One assistant once asked her, "Why don't you ever take credit?" She laughed softly and said, "Because the moment I take credit, it's no longer about them." A moment of reflection in 2020, as the world fell into chaos during the pandemic. Madonna isolated like everyone else, alone in her home, away from the stage lights. And in that silence, she found herself writing again. Not music this time, but letters. Letters to her children. Letters to the people she had met in Malawi. Letters to her younger self. In one, she wrote, "You were always running, chasing love, chasing meaning. But the truth is, you found it every time you gave a piece of yourself away." Those words would later inspire her short film, Rising Malawi, a tribute to the people who taught her what love truly means. The emotional peak one evening, years after the hospital opened, Madonna visited Malawi again, quietly, without press. She went to a small hill near the orphanage and stood beneath a tree where she used to play with the local children. Beside her stood Mercy, now a young woman. "Do you remember the first time you came here?" Mercy asked. Madonna nodded, eyes glistening. "Yes, I remember every face, every story." Mercy looked up at her mother. "Do you think Grandma would be proud?" Madonna smiled, that slow, trembling smile only mothers know. "I think she'd say I finally came home." Tears slipped down her cheek. For all the fame, the awards, the decades of being idolized, this was the moment that mattered most. Not the lights, not the music, just this quiet peace and a promise fulfilled. The legacy beyond. Fame today, Madonna's influence goes beyond music. Her foundation continues to support education and healthcare across Africa. Her children, inspired by her work, often return to Malawi to volunteer. And millions who once saw her only as a pop star now see her as something far greater, a giver. When people talk about her career, they mention records and achievements. But in the villages of Malawi, she's remembered differently. To them, she's Mama Madonna, the woman who built hospitals, gave homes, and showed that love can travel farther than fame ever could. The final note as the night falls. We return to that same image, Madonna standing under the African sky, listening to the laughter of children in the distance. She looks up, as if speaking to the stars. "You gave me pain so I'd learn compassion. You gave me loss so I'd understand giving. Maybe that was always the plan." She closes her notebook, takes a deep breath, and walks away. Not as the queen of pop, but as a woman who turned her scars into shelter for others. The camera fades to black. Soft piano music rises, and the narrator's voice whispers, "Some people chase fame to be remembered, others chase love to be fulfilled, but only a few, like Madonna, give so much that the world itself becomes their memory."